3時間も待っていたのよ私猫と一緒にトリッキーのミニスカートでトリッキーみたいなポーズでトリッキーのミニスカートでトリッキーみたいに痩せおこちの私その時電話のベルが私猫みたいに喋ったテレビのボリューム下げて私嘘みたいな声でトリッキーのミニスカートでトリッキーみたいなポーズでトリッキーのミニスカートでトリッキーみたいに痩せあこちの私私猫と一緒に3時間も待っていたのよ私猫と一緒にトリッキーのミニスカートでトリッキーみたいなポーズでトリッキーのミニスカートでトリッキーみたいに痩せおこちでトリッキーのミニスカートでトリッキーみたいなポーズでトリッキーのミニスカートでトリッキーみたいに
Hello, our users. My name is John Kulas. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm in a not typical location. I'm on the road this week, but I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, 12-year user of R for normal, boring statistical and analytical operations. But for the majority of those 12 years, I'd say 9 or 10 now, and I just dropped a grape on the floor. It's not even my floor, so I feel bad about it. But 9 or 10 of those years, I've been not only using R, but I've been wrapping my analyses, the R focus itself of most data scientists, the thing that you're doing. I've been enveloping that within the broader scripting of the specification of those analyses. And so this manner of structuring your work is consistent with this idea of reproducible research. Kind of is associated with something that comes from computer science called literate programming. And so I'm really interested in bringing this to a social science, behavioral science, management science audience. And so each week we hang out here and we just kind of explore different capabilities of structuring your work this way. We use the metaphor of an academic office hour, which simply means stop by and pop in and ask a question. Now tonight, my setup is a little shoestring, so I'm probably not going to be able to see comments if they come up. So don't comment tonight, but normally when we're here, I'm usually not away from my normal setup, but if I'm on my normal setup, pop in and ask a question, and that's why we do it live. I think it's important to show mistakes when they happen. I think it's also important to be an available resource if people are out there and they just want to bounce some ideas off of someone. So we'll hang out for about an hour. I don't know if we'll make it an hour or not tonight. But in the absence of those questions, we cover a focused topic. And today's topic, truth be told, I chose tonight's topic because I wanted to get away from Microsoft products, which we've been doing the last couple of weeks. And also I just kind of found a cool cartoon. And so I wanted to come up with a topic that was consistent with that cartoon. So we're going to take a look at Distill tonight. Now, Distill, I'm not sure how I'm not sure how relevant or germane or topical, I guess, Distill is going to be once we get into it. I don't use it, and I haven't used it. We'll explore it together here tonight. But Distill, I think, is one of those kind of legacy or older capabilities that probably got taken over by Quarto, the software that we use to develop things like the slides that you're looking at. By the way, the slides, there's a link to the slides in the comments. Please go ahead and use them. I like putting these slides together. And it's more reinforcing to me if people are using them. Didn't want to say, what else did I want to say about that? Oh, there's also a link to the tutorial in the comments, and the tutorial will walk you through how to create documents using this process that we talk about. If you're just completely new to this, if you're like, hey, well, what is that? It looks kind of neat, but I'm not exactly sure how to do that. So before we get into tonight's topic, because we look at these capabilities in an exploratory manner. Each subsequent week, what we do is we'll go ahead and, hey, look at this. My setup is working a little better than I thought it was. We'll go ahead and do a more structured presentation of what happened last week. So let's get our transition here into what happened last week.
Well, the search for the Picayune pot containing $1 million in Confederate money had some unexpected complications, didn't it? The bank was robbed, Rocky was sent to the hospital, and Bullwinkle was chasing the bandits on his bicycle. He had a slight controversy with a tree trunk, though, and forgot why he was following babyface Braunschweiger and his light-fingered 5-2. As a result, when he opened the rubber suitcase instead of his own and found it stuffed with greenbacks, he could only find one reason for it.
It's counterfeit Confederate money.
And Bullwinkle carelessly began to lug the suitcase back to town, little realizing that those $10 bills fluttering in the breeze were real, honest-to-goodness U.S. money. Meanwhile, babyface Braunschweiger had reached his hideout and was preparing to divide the loot. He didn't know that he had Bullwinkle's suitcase containing 3 pairs of socks and a peanut butter sandwich.
Come on, babyface, quit stalling.
Yeah, come across with our share before we get annoyed.
Tot, fellows. Do I look like double-crosser?
Yeah.
Just asking. Well, we'll just open... Ooh.
So last week we continued our exploration into Microsoft products, and week prior we looked at PowerPoint. I was really impressed with what PowerPoint products look like as scripted using the procedures recommended by the Quarto team. The Quarto team publishes a piece of software called Quarto, and the specifications, the Quarto specifications that led to PowerPoint slides were pretty straightforward, and a lot of the capabilities that I enjoy on these weekly slides that you're looking at, the slide type here is called the Reveal.js slide. But a lot of capabilities that I've grown to appreciate were transportable over to PowerPoint. Now, with Word, we saw more limitations. So it's still, there are some kind of pros and cons to using Quarto to produce Word documents. Again, I think the context within which this might be appropriate or pursued is if you're embedded within a larger team of individuals, and that larger team of individuals is wanting Microsoft Word or Microsoft PowerPoint in terms of the actual end product that they're expecting to see. And in my field, in my experience, that's very consistent. And even in an academic environment, it's very consistent for people that you collaborate with to want things that you're collaborating on to be in PowerPoint or Word format, or more recently, that probably has flipped a little bit to predominantly be Google products, so Google Slides or Google Doc, but effectively it's the same type of document. So we haven't gotten to that yet. Maybe that's something we could look at. Let me turn down that music just a little bit here. It's a little too much. There's probably a little too much on the Wi-Fi that I'm kind of stealing here too. There we go. So the the world of work, the people that you're collaborating with are probably going to expect information in Google Docs or Word doc information or Google Slides or PowerPoint slide information. To me, those are very similar product types. You can certainly read and edit PowerPoint documents through Google Slides, and you can do the same thing with Word documents. And I know a lot of people go back and forth between those. Using these processes that we talk about on a weekly basis, I don't use Microsoft products, and I don't often, unless collaborators demand it, use Google products either. But in terms of Word, it's a long-winded way of me saying that everybody uses it. And so even if they don't use that specifically, they're using something very similar to it, which would probably be Google Docs. And so just the sheer ubiquity of those types of documents are one reason why you would want to engage in this process. And the meta reason you want to engage in this process is behind the scenes in the creation of that document. You are engaging in a process that's consistent with this principle of reproducibility. So if someone else, you can share the source document with anyone else and they can reproduce it. And that's important. So the sheer just pervasiveness of Microsoft Word is one kind of, I think, pro of being able to generate these document types using Quarto or Quarto specifications. There's a few things that we did try out that worked just fine. And so the big thing for us in terms of using these processes is that we're not just typically creating a slide or a paper, but there's a quantitative component to it. There's actually an analytical component to it. If it's not quantitative, it's qualitative, but it's still analytical. So there is a desire and a need for people like us to interact with a statistical or analytical processor. And so sharing of your script is something that we spent a lot of time on last week, and it was fine. It worked just fine within those Word documents. So that's called code echoing. And so code echoing is just simply sharing in a nice format the information that you've specified in terms of the analyses that you're doing. Now, another feature that I thought was really kind of nice in these Word documents was the table of contents. And the table of contents was a single line specification. It was a simple request. It's saying, yes, I would like a table of contents, and that came up rendered really nicely. Now, if you're doing a good job of specifying your headings and subheadings, major sections of your document, minor sections of your document, that's going to create for you a very nice table of contents. So, for example, if your team is asking for or expecting a Word document, one thing that you can do that's going to make life easier on you is to script your information using headings, using markdown headings, and the table of contents is going to be auto generated for you. Now, my recollection is there was a process when I was last using Microsoft Word. I believe that there's a way within Word to kind of do the same thing, but we can do that the way that we structure our document using Quarto. Bullets work just fine. Callouts, the Quarto callouts that I've come to really kind of think are neat in terms of formatting. We didn't check those on stream last week, but I checked those after the fact, and those work just fine as well. So there's a lot of functionality there that ports over to Microsoft Word documents that work just great. The kind of maybe a silly thing, but I really appreciate the default appearance of the Word document rendered files. So the way that they looked, I thought was just sharp, I guess, clean, nice. And of course you can change that if you want, but just the default specifications I thought looked great. And then this fourth bullet that's considered here both a pro and a con, that was shared from last week's presentation of PowerPoint. So when you give your product to someone you're collaborating with or someone you want to review the product, they have the option of editing. It's just there. It's just inherent in the product type. And so most people think of that as a good thing from the perspective of trying to be fully transparent and reproducible in terms of the structure of what we're doing. That's not desired. So certainly people are used to that. Maybe that's one of the reasons that Word and PowerPoint are so popular, is that it's just easy to tweak from one user to another. But when we lose that level of control, this whole concept of reproducible research, it's got to be something that feels very, very comforting to control freaks. And I'm probably a bit of a control freak. But you certainly lose a lot of end user control when you pass off that document. The end users are going to appreciate it, though. So that's a pro from their perspective. I would consider that to probably be a con from the perspective of the person who's creating the document, the crafter of the document. So what you carefully specify might look completely different after handing it off to someone else, or even you yourself. You can edit it yourself. And I know students from my past experience, that was something that was very tempting for students to do. Once you get a document in one of these formats, Word or PowerPoint, there is a desire to click and drag and kind of tweak. Okay, so some of the other cons, I guess, is just trying to impose some different styles. I've really come to, over the course of the last couple of years of working with Reveal.js, probably most directly, but just Quarto HTML products in general, the CSS, the scripting specification of the style of how things look, the format, I've just come to really appreciate that. So it's very, very easy to do really minor tweaks on things using just a bit of CSS. And as a matter of fact, it's even so much easier now than it was even 2 years ago because of AI. AI is so helpful in terms of helping you determine how to actually come up with a script that's going to have the desired result. And I don't know why I'm so verbose today. Sorry about that. Now, the way in which you're probably going to have the easiest level of control over the style of your document is through templates. And templates are created the same way in Word as they would be in PowerPoint. You go in there, you open a blank document, and you change the background, you change the fonts, you change maybe the columns in terms of the layout, in terms of margins and columns. You can probably do with layouts, with templates, I'm sorry. And then you save that template, and you can call up that saved template quite easily from within one of these Quarto scripts. That's not a problem, but you do still have to go in there and do some clicking and dragging and more traditional stylistic determinations to create the template itself. And so that's not really a con. It's just saying that process of having to create a template that way is a little different from what I've grown to appreciate, which is the plain text specification is in concrete. It doesn't change. It's the same. And whatever goop you want to apply in terms of look and rendering and formatting and style, you just specify that through a different plain text specification. And so that's why it's listed here as a con. Because of the limitations, because you don't have that same plain text scripting specification in terms of style, or not, at least not as directly as you would in a different product type, like an HTML product type. In terms of the layout, we had a difficult time specifying layout in the way we normally would through a Quarto document. And so, for example, the column specification, the Quarto specification of different columns within a document, we did not get that to actually be recognized, and we didn't find that surprising. We didn't think it would be, but the number of layout options consistent with this idea of making a template, number of layout options that you have if you want to produce a Word document looks like it's going to be a bit limited relative to other product types, PDF or HTML document types. A big limitation to both the PowerPoint and Word formats, in my opinion, is lack of support for interactivity. Now, that's a bit trivial if you're talking about something like a GIF. So here on this slide, for example, Spider-Man is shaking down hopefully a thug. He looks, I don't know, he doesn't look too seedy, but I'm guessing that guy is a underground criminal. And so the old classic Spidey that had webbing in his armpits, which you don't see that much anymore, I don't think. That looks to me like a 1960s type rendering of Spider-Man. But it's a GIF, it's a moving object, it's a moving picture that's rather trivial for kind of spicing up slides and documents. But data visualizations are not trivial. And so we have so many options now in terms of interactivity that we can present to people when we're giving them the results of our analysis. We can do plotly objects, we can do leaflet maps. There's so much that we can do with a simple kind of very small line, very, very minimal number of line specifications in terms of the scripting itself, and get some really impressive, really neat looking visuals that are not only interesting, but they're interactive. So the end user can play with it a little bit. So the Word documents don't have that. At least there may be an add-on or something that would support that, but certainly out of the box, it's not something that you should expect to be able to do. And then again, the other con here is just the person on the other end who's receiving the document can go ahead and click and drag and expand things and change margins and change fonts. They can change a lot, so they can edit it. And from the perspective of the creator, that's something that I guess I'm not so keen on. But again, from the perspective of the person putting it together, that's definitely going to be seen as a positive. Okay. So that's Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, I was impressed with both of them in terms of the Quarto specifications, but just in a very broad sense, it seems like the capabilities, the functionality that we expect to see in other product types are carrying over a little more strongly, or there's more of those that are carrying over with the PowerPoint product type than do with the Word. So Word seems a little further away to me in terms of the types of things we want to do to document specifications. Okay, so today let's take a look at Distill. This is a very wordy slide. Normally I wouldn't do this. This week I decided to just let it go on there because this information was mainly provided by AI. So Distill is not a package that I have ever used. I had heard of it, but I hadn't used it. And doing a little digging into Distill, I was more and more intrigued as I saw it. And to give you a little background here, I'm not sure that it's that important, but it is to me, I guess. So because I'm so geeked up about this process of structuring your work, one of the side projects that I have going on is the development of a course on, currently it's called Literate Programming Principles Applied to Social, Behavioral, and Management Sciences. And it's intended for graduate students in psychology, in sociology, economics, and maybe in advanced business classes as well. So people mostly seeking their PhDs who have a data science component or interest. So I'm putting this together, and part of putting it together is looking at the history of this and trying to figure out, where did this start? When did it become popular? What fields have been noted as leveraging these ways of structuring your work? And so because I'm doing that, I'm interested in Distill, and I'm becoming more, the reading about Distill was more interesting to me because I think it's important from a historical context. I think that what Distill does is probably redundant with what Quarto currently does, but we'll check it out tonight. I will say some of the philosophy that the Distill team, and by the way, the Distill team seems like it's predominantly, maybe entirely, but populated by Posit employees, including the founder of Posit, or one of the founders of Posit. So we're seeing this with a lot of packages. A lot of them are markdown packages. If you trace them back to their source, you'll see a lot of contribution from the core Posit team. And this is certainly one of those products. I think the most interesting thing to me here, and maybe this is probably a bit, maybe just a personal interest, but a few years ago, I tried to, and I guess I haven't completely abandoned the concept, but a few years ago, I brought up to other colleagues the concept of having interactivity as something that is enabled and supported and appreciated at our annual academic conference. So this is other industrial and organizational psychologists who kind of by reputation are supposed to be, I don't know, I guess a little more open to the quantitative side of things, to analyses and to statistics, numbers. So psychology as a broad field hasn't always, there are subfields and subspecialties within psychology. And when you pursue a graduate degree, you kind of have to choose one. So there's clinical psychology, there's school psychology, there's developmental psychology, there's cognitive psychology, and social psychology, and actually industrial and organizational psychology. So across all of those different subdisciplines, there's kind of cultures, and some of the cultures are more supportive and embracing of statistics as a method or tool than others, and that's of course not universally true, but by reputation, there's a bit of a difference there that historically has been there. Anyway, so industrial and organizational psychologists are supposed to be more open to kind of some of these newer technologies and analytical and quantitative things. So I was trying to convince my colleagues that it would be neat at our annual conference if we actually had a presentation type that allowed for interactivity in terms of our data visualization. That never really went anywhere. I'm not the most, I would make a terrible car salesman. So I'm not someone that's going to get ideas. I don't know. It's not surprising that I wasn't able to be convincing to other people on this, but I am very encouraged to see that there were other disciplines and other kind of pursuits that were consistent with this as well. And so Distill seems to be a package that had this same orientation, which was, let's take the traditional stodgy, I'm going to use the word stodgy. It's a colloquial word, but it fits here. The traditional stodgy kind of structured static presentation of information. And let's embrace some of these newer capabilities and technologies and see if we can actually have academic and scientific information that's presented in a more interesting web-based HTML formatted kind of product. And so there was a journal that was consistent with this. It was called, I believe the journal itself was called Distill or Distill.pub. It was focused on machine learning, this kind of family of analytical procedures that was super hot about 10 years ago. And it's still something that is used, but it's not something that has as, I don't know, laser focus or magnified interest that's placed on it. So Distill kind of stemmed, it sounds like, out of this scientific journals idea that let's actually have some web-based interactivity stuff and make it fun, and we can even have contests and we can give people awards if what they're presenting is super neat. So that's the same thing I wanted to do. I didn't know that this was going on, but it's exactly the same thing that I wanted to do with our annual conference. Fell flat on its face for me. Unfortunately, it kind of sounds like it also fell flat on its face for the Distill people, because they launched their journal sometime in the mid 2010s, and it's currently suspended, so that it's not publishing right now. There could be all kinds of reasons for that, but in terms of the path I went down, I wonder if there just wasn't enough interest, which it's, I'm going to keep promoting this stuff as much as I can. And again, I'm not the world's best salesman, but I don't know. This stuff has fallen on deaf ears for a long time. in my discipline. So a little unfortunate, but let's give the Distill people some love, and let's check this puppy out. So it's going to be a little difficult for me to screen share, I think, tonight. So I'm going to see if I can, if you bear with me for a second here. Let's see if I can focus on my RStudio. There we go. Now the problem with this, I think the problem with this is going to be, let me see if I can move things around here a little bit. Sorry, I'm mumbling. Let me see if I can move things around here a little bit. The problem with this is going to be when we get a product, and I'll probably forget it, and it will be hidden. So something will pop up for me and you might not see it. So I apologize in advance if that actually occurs. So let's actually, I'm saying actually a lot tonight, aren't I? I will actually try to stop doing that. Okay, so let's see if I have that installed here on my local machine. I'm pretty sure I don't. Distill. Closest thing I have to Distill is a package called distributional. I don't remember. Distributional is probably one of those packages that comes bundled with the base distribution of R, because that's not something that I have no idea what that is. So let's add Distill. I believe Distill is still on CRAN. There it is. Okay, so there's a distiller, and there's also a distillery, but we just want base Distill. So let's go ahead and install that. I do need a new RStudio installation as well. So there's a few things I need to do on this computer that you're looking at here. Let's bring up, I don't use the helper function often, but boy, the last time I did it, wow, look at that. I was looking at March Madness. So speaking of machine learning, we do some machine learning with the NCAA basketball tournament each March. And so that it's kind of frustrating because each March, whoever does packages that help support that, they move stuff around or they don't support it any longer. So the stupid code that I wrote the previous year is not going to be directly transferable to the following year. It's been like 5 straight years about this, so I have to search for new processes to use. But let's see what they say about Distill here. Hello. There we go. So Distill. It looks like we can. So Distill is going to be used to create a few different product types. I think we'll take a look at the article first, but then also the intent of the team is to enhance scientific and academic communication beyond the tradition. And I'm speaking from my interpretation of this. It sounds like the intent is to kind of enhance scientific and academic communication beyond the traditional, just actual hard copy or increasingly online version of the PDF type version of a scientific article. So blogs and websites and things like that are going to be supported here as well. Why is ggplot come up? Let's see what the description is here of the package itself. So scientific and technical article format for the web. Distill articles feature attractive, reader-friendly typography, flexible layout options for visualizations, and full support for footnotes and citations. Certainly, Quarto does that as well now. And if you look at the names of the maintainers and authors, and contributors, you're actually going to see some familiar names on there in terms of the Quarto team itself. Let me pull this up. Let's see if I can share my screen again here. Pull up one of the hyperlinks. I can find it. Again, sorry, my apologies. This is definitely not something I want to be doing every week here. So good thing I'm not on the road that often. But here's what we actually see from the team. It's a GitHub repo, but this is available on CRAN. So the last contribution was 3 years ago. And again, I'm guessing that that's because Quarto has probably taken over the functionality of what this actually is. Distill for R markdown. So it's going to be R markdown file type. That just simply means the 3-letter extension on the end of it. It's going to be RMD instead of QMD. The structure is largely the same. It's going to be a YAML at the top, which is a meta document specification, and then content below that includes things like R code and analyses, but also markdown to indicate how you want things to be formatted. So it's a web publishing format optimized for scientific and technical communication. Let's spend a little bit of time on this because, again, I did some AI looking, but I didn't do any deep looking, just as a KI, as a Kulas intelligence. So reader-friendly typography that adapts well to mobile devices. So you're seeing this kind of flavor of presenting in a different format than is traditional in scientific and academic or technical kind of arenas. Features essential to technical writing like LaTeX math, citations, footnotes, flexible figure layout options. For example, displaying the figures at a larger width than the article text. So there should be specification over things like sizing. Attractively rendered tables with support for pagination. Now this has always been something that's been a bit of a challenge in PDF representations of journal articles. If you have a very large, for example, correlation table, where does it break? How does it break? And there are, of course, style guide specifications here that are followed, but they're thinking of a lot here. The ability to incorporate JavaScript and D3-based interactive visualizations. So this, to me, is again one of the things that one of the reasons why I wouldn't want to be held to Microsoft Word as a final product type is the lack of support for interactive visualizations. We just have so many neat capabilities now. It's nice. It's nice that people are thinking about, hey, how do we get this into a traditional audience? So how do we get this neat new capability into the hands of people who are kind of familiar with a process and a way of structuring and presenting things? A variety of ways to publish, including support for collections or articles as a Distill website. So again, web and blog-based kind of products. So let's see if this page has any recommendations in terms of what to take a look at here first. There is, I believe this is the same page that I have a hyperlink to. Now that it's installed and we're in RStudio, we should actually be able to go through the wizard, and we should have a template in the wizard. I should have looked at that. I should have looked at that before I installed it. So sorry about that. Did nothing come up that entire time? Come on. You heard me read, but you probably didn't see what I was reading. Sorry about that. We'll probably end a little early tonight just because it's not entirely surprising that there's going to be a few struggles with this. There's my RStudio again. So that's what I was talking through there. I was looking at the Distill site and a little information about it, but on the site it also had a walkthrough about how to access some of the Distill capabilities. And since we're in RStudio, we should be able to now open a new file. If I go to R markdown, and you'll see a structure similar to what you see with a Quarto file type. There's a document, a presentation, and there's different options in the left-hand window. One of the options that I have is template. Now, my recollection is this is unique to our markdown document types. So for example, when I was authoring papers in APA format, American Psychological Association format, I used a package called PapaJa. And so PapaJa, one of the ways to access it through our markdown is through accessing this from template option. Quarto, the templates that we use in Quarto have largely been executed through extensions. And so you're not going to see this from template option with Quarto. I don't think. We'll go take a look at it in a second. But now you see something new that has popped up here. So you see a Distill article. That was not on my option list before. Let's see what else we have. There you see Papaja, if you can read that small. I have an articles package as well. I remember looking at that probably for one of these weekly sessions. And so kind of similar, there's ways of producing scientific articles that are consistent with specific journals. And that all comes from the articles package. Jerningen. Good old Jerningen. I haven't used that for a while now. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Distill article. It should give us a template. There we go. Not very much in there at all. So here's the YAML on starting from line 1, going down to line 12. You see on line 10 here something that I really miss. So I really miss in Quarto files the ability to inject R commands within the YAML. So I'm sure there's a reason that well, one of the reasons that is done is the processing for the front matter seems to be different than the processing of the broader paper. And so again, the Posit team, and it's not just Posit, it's VS Code, it's Positron is the same company, but Jupyter Lab as well. All of these IDEs, all of these neat pieces of software that facilitate everything we're doing, not just the specification of an analytical focused thing, but you can also execute full projects and papers and presentations and websites from within each of these IDEs. They are all moving toward being language agnostic. And that just simply means that they don't prioritize R, or they don't prioritize Python, and they don't prioritize Julia. They don't prioritize whatever the language is, C++. They don't prioritize it. And I think that's probably rather prescient, because what AI has done is it's really made the point of entry into these different languages, the bar to entry, very low, I guess is probably the way to put it. Historically, people have learned and been comfortable with and focused on and relied on just one language. So in my field of psychology, it's the language that the quant heads, and I say that in a positive way. So that's a positive kind of, it's a positive thing that I mean there when I say quant heads. But the quant heads in my field mostly use R. It's not universal, but many of them use R. In computer science or math, they might be more likely to use Python. But by tradition, you learned one of these languages, and that's kind of where you stay. Machine learning is probably, we're talking about the Distill journal and its association with machine learning. I will say that my first kind of bump from R into Python was when I first became interested in learning about machine learning. And so that was before AI was a huge thing here, but even maybe 8 to 10 years ago, there was an interest in having this kind of agnostic or open to different scripting languages in support of a product or analysis that you're interested in. So on line 10 here, you see some R code. This is inline R code. This is very familiar to me. I used to structure my reports this way, such that I would just say, for date, go ahead and in R, use the function sysdate. If I copy that and just paste it in my console down here, you'll see, you'll actually see that brought up. And so that's a way of structuring that I'm very familiar with, and I kind of miss, but that's no longer supported. One of the reasons it's no longer supported, I'm sorry, with Quarto. So if you have a Quarto document, you're not going to be able to use inline R script in the YAML. And that's, again, the broader reason for that is because of the way in which these IDE publishers are structuring their software, and they want to be openly, they don't want to prioritize any single language. My voice is giving out, sorry. So let's go ahead and just render this and see what it looks like. Then maybe we'll add a figure in there, and then we'll just call it a day, since my voice is starting to give out a little bit. So I'm going to call it article. You'll see that 3-letter extension RMD on the back of it. And it should give us an HTML product type. And you see some formatting options here. So that's kind of the unique thing, I guess, about Distill, is just the simple formatting option here. And you'll see some help pages if you actually look. The Distill help page, it was obviously published using the Distill package, because there's little stylistic things here that I noticed. One is just the font. The other is the author specification, affiliation, spacely sprockets. I love that. Okay, so let's see if we can put a, I'm sorry, that's probably not showing up for you, is it? Let me see if it's showing up for you. Where are you? Where are you, people? You disappeared from me. Where the heck? Sorry, I can't find you. Wherever you are, people. Are we still? Come on. I have no idea if we're still live or not, because, oh, here we are. Jeez Louise. Yeah, you didn't see that rendered document. Let me pull it up here. This is brutal, just kind of going back. I mean, it's got to be worse trying to watch this, but just going back and forth between so many different windows here, trying to show you what I have. I guess maybe the best thing to do is stay in RStudio, and we'll just maximize the screen here, the preview. And this is what it looks like. Again, the formatting to me looks the same as it did on the Distill help page. There's a hyperlink to that in this week's slides if you want to go ahead and take a look at that. Let's see if we can put an image in there. I'm going to be off screen here again for a second. But I'm going to look for a spacely space sprocket. So I believe it was Mr. Spacely, but I don't know that he had a first name. I'm sure he did and does, but we'll put Mr. Spacely in here and see what that image looks like. Now the specification, I'm guessing it's just normal markdown specification. So that's exclamation point square bracket, and then in parentheses the image itself, and there he is. There's Mr. Spacely. Now he should be saying Jackson, because that's what he always says. We'll see if we can do Jetson, you're fired. Now I'm not sure that this is. It's been so long since I really authored an article using R Markdown, and in my head there's a bit of a conflation between the specification of things like labels in, it's wanting blog down. I'm not sure why it's wanting blog down. The specification of labels and titles in R Markdown versus Quarto, but yeah, certainly we got this label here did show up as the figure caption, Jetson, you're fired. Okay, let's add maybe just a visual and see what the interactive visuals look like. And then we'll probably call it early tonight. So I'm going to again be off screen. Sorry about that. I'm just going to look for a Plotly R object. And we know that there's a few that are just kind of basic interactivity, but really a few lines of code. So it's easy to specify and share. So I'm just going to look for one of those. I'm kind of talking to you while I'm looking with the awareness that you have no idea what I'm looking at. Okay, so there we go, back in. Let me do a bit of art code, add an art chunk, and I'm just going to paste in with the request for plotly object here. And we'll see what that looks like. And it should actually give us interactivity, but interactivity in a format that's intended for something like an academic audience. Now it's thinking quite a bit here. I'm not sure why. It shouldn't have that much difficulty just with a base plotly object. But again, this is my laptop and I don't have a lot loaded on here. So maybe it looks to me like it's probably just going through things for the first time here and trying to figure out how to resolve it. It looked like that was a pandoc issue. So not issue, there was no issue, but the device in the back end that gives us this nice product was probably doing the most thinking. So let me are you still there? You're still there. Let me just pop this out a little bit and then we'll probably call it, because I keep losing you and I just almost dropped everything. So there we have interactivity. And again, with these plotly objects, you can choose how you want information to be displayed. You should be able to lasso some of this and kind of zero in on things. If you want to do that, you can take a snapshot. You can certainly do all kinds of stuff with these neat objects. Okay, so let's just call it there tonight. Sorry, peeps, that it was a little rough in terms of trying to just keep on top of things. But there's Distill, and so Distill is a way to publish and present, not publish, I'm sorry, a way to craft academic type documents that's nicely formatted, but it's also receptive to some of these enhancements that are capable if we have HTML file types. So interactivity to me is awesome, and that's super cool that it's available. Okay, so thanks everybody for bearing with me here from my temporary location. Next week we should be back to normal, and next week if there's a request on a topic, please let me know and we'll take a look at it. Otherwise I will just kind of look around and see what might be kind of interesting for us all to look at. There was a request for, there was a topic. I'm going to look back through my notes and see what that is and see if maybe we can do that next week. I didn't want to do it when I wasn't on my local computer because of some of these issues of just, I can't really see what's going on, and I sometimes forget to share with you the proper screen. All right, enough of me babbling. See you all next week.